Welcome back to another video from PM Problems, the site dedicated to project management, construction management, and workplace topics. If you love that stuff too, be sure to check out our website at solvepmproblems.com for tons of free articles, downloads, and more. Now, let's get into today's topic. On just about every project, the schedule will need to be accelerated at some point. When delays arise from surprises, issues, and performance problems, it's only natural to start thinking about the schedule. What's it going to take to finally get this thing done? There are many ways to go about accelerating a project, and each acceleration method has advantages and disadvantages to be aware of. Let's talk about 5 ways to accelerate a project, along with the good and bad for each. The most common way PMs accelerate their project schedule is by adding additional resources to it. It makes sense. If 5 people can't push a cart up a hill, how about 6 or 7? By adding resources to a project, it'll almost certainly accelerate the schedule, but at what cost? Just like there are sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen, there are times when adding more people becomes futile. Only so many people can write code or dig a hole. After a certain point, the productivity per person drops off significantly. As PMs, we must always make sure that the juice is worth squeezing. Production rates per added resources must stay constant. When they fall, it's time to scale back. Here are a few situations when it makes sense to add some more resources. The cost of not hitting a deadline or milestone is greater than the additional cost of adding the resources. The sheer volume of work allows for adding resources without losing productivity per person. Or by hiring a specialist like a consultant or expert that will provide a lot of value for what you're paying them. A second way to shorten a project's timeline is by extending the working hours. This is often done by paying workers and staff overtime for longer hours each day, or by working on the weekends as well. Paying for additional hours comes at a premium though. The cost to the project for additional working hours can be 1.5 or even 2 times the normal hourly pay, so PMs should remain cautious when extending hours. While extending working hours is a great way to accelerate a project, there are a few drawbacks. For one, people get tired. Staff that have been working longer hours are more likely to make mistakes, perform at a slower pace, and even get sick from lowering their immune system. Having multiple rotating teams involved in the performance of work leaves the project more susceptible to errors by the work changing hands frequently, along with the potential for inconsistent quality. Here are a few situations when extending working hours can healthily accelerate a project. When the cost of not hitting a deadline or milestone exceeds additional cost of longer hours, similar to item 1. There's a seasonal deadline to hit that's affected by weather or holidays, or if the extended hours are only needed for a short while, and burnout or productivity loss aren't a risk. Every project involves a handful of tasks that are extremely important to the project's outcome. These items fall on the critical path of the schedule. Then there are non-urgent tasks that happen alongside the major ones. They have plenty of float, which means they can be put off for a while still getting finished on time. When entering a period of acceleration, resources from non-critical work tasks can be reallocated to critical path items. This option is essentially the same as technique number 1, adding resources, but the advantage of reallocation is that you aren't technically adding resources, which means at the moment your project isn't taking on additional costs. For example, the captain of a ship will call for all hands on deck when an urgent situation arises. They're basically telling the crew to drop what they're doing, a less urgent task at this moment, and come help with the emergency. When you can reallocate resources instead of adding them, it's usually a money saver. While all projects have their own unique circumstances, reallocating resources to accelerate the schedule is a good idea in the following scenarios. Your project presently has resources working on tasks with a lot of float. The budget is tight and there's no margin for more resources. Or there's an urgent task that must be done as quickly as possible. If acceleration is required on your project, look for opportunities to overlap activities. Also referred to as consolidating the schedule, overlapping activities allows for more successive tasks to get done in less time. There are plenty of examples of this in everyday life. The assembly line, for instance, is a perfect example of consolidating tasks on a massive scale. Each person or action in the assembly process works on one thing only. As soon as their step is complete, the part that got assembled is moved along. Prior to this approach, one worker would perform many different tasks during the assembly of one unit. In the world of construction, many processes are staggered in this fashion to shorten timelines. A paving company will have one crew prepping the ground that a new road will sit on, with a second crew following them putting down crushed stone, and a third crew behind them laying down asphalt. While overlapping activities can be a great way to accelerate a project, there is something to keep in mind. It's generally easier to consolidate unrelated tasks than it is to consolidate tasks that are linked to one another in succession. If one task runs into trouble, all successor tasks that follow it will also have trouble. Sticking with our assembly line metaphor, a car factory can overlap tasks like fabricating the engines, the body panels, and the transmissions at the same time, given that they're not directly related. In contrast, it'd be impossible to overlap tasks like installing body panels and lights while the car is getting painted. they're too closely related with too much happening at once. Only certain tasks can be overlapped, but doing so is a valuable way to speed up a project. As the old saying goes, the easiest way to save money is to not spend it. The same can be said for a project's budget and for the project's timeline. Project acceleration is often a byproduct of addressing inefficiencies. If we're trying to save money out of our own pocket, we cut the cable bill, we eat at home more, and we buy things at bargain prices. If we're trying to save money or time in a project, we can do the same thing. In terms of saving time, it's key to understand productivity and production rates on all of the work being performed. Are teams working productively? Are they producing all of the results that the project requires them on any given day? Whether your project involves design professionals, field crews, or tech experts, you can ask them if there's anything they need in order to work more efficiently. Sometimes the right piece of equipment or a tweak in the routine will boost productivity in a significant way. Similarly, are there any time-wasting activities going on? Do you see obvious room for improvement? Spending time monitoring the moment-to-moment production on a project is important in order to understand the typical day of your team. Addressing inefficiencies is a great practice for project managers at any point in the project, but it's particularly useful during periods of schedule acceleration. And that wraps up our discussion about 5 common methods for accelerating a project. I hope this video has been helpful and informative. For more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe to stay in touch. You can also head over to our website at solvepmproblems.com for tons of free articles, downloads, and more. Just click the link in the description below. Until next time, this is PM Problems, signing off.